Hi, I'm Harry Stegall. In our last segment, we talked about how easy it is to take your eye off of a suspect for just a second and him or her to raise a gun and shoot you and possibly kill you. Now today, I want to touch base with you on something that comes after officer safety, and it comes in a split second. It's called officer survival. You go from one mode to the other without even thinking about it. Now there are a lot of ways for an officer to be put into an officer survival mode other than a gunshot wound. There could be a terrible automobile accident, it could be a knife, it could be an explosion, it could be all sorts of different things. So don't just think about being shot when you're put into that survival situation. The first thing I want to ask you today is, have you ever really been tested? Have you been tested to the point that you know what your body will take and how much grit and gravel that you've got inside of you when you need to make something happen? Hopefully in your police academy, you are tested every day, both mentally and physically. Sometimes you don't even know that you're being tested physically, but here's a perfect example. You line up on the 100-yard line, and there's instructors down at the other end of the field, and they tell you to run, and they tell you before you take off, you better not leave anything on that field. You better be throwing up, passing out, falling down. You better give me everything you got in that 100 yards. And so you take off down that field, and the only thing you can think about is, I am absolutely trying to kill myself to get to the other end, get to that 100-yard line. And you cross that line and you feel like, God, wow, I can't believe I made it. Some people start throwing up. You're tugging on your shorts because you're tired. And then all of a sudden the instructors are back on that line saying, get back on that line, get back on that line, let's go, let's go, let's go. And then they tell you the same thing again. You run your guts out, you better be prepared to fall down. If you fall down and you can't go, you better scratch to get across that finish line. Go! And so there you go, back that 100 yards, pushing yourself to a limit that you never thought was possible. You're beginning to ask yourself, can I make that line? I don't know if I can or not. But something inside keeps pushing you to that line. And then you cross that 100 line for the second time on that wind sprint, and now you really feel bad. You're dizzy. Half the people have fallen down on the ground. And the instructors are walking by saying, get up, get up. You don't deserve to be in this school. If you can't get your ass up off the ground and run this 100 yards, you don't need to be here. And so now everybody rises again, and they get somewhere along the line, and he says, go. And now the people start to move down the field, and some of them start to tell on themselves whether or not they have the ability to reach down and get another handful of something when they have to make it go. Some of the people fall down, and the instructor runs behind them, and he says, crawl. If you can't get up and walk and run, crawl. Put your hands out in front of yourself and pull. Crawl. I want to see you moving. And eventually, everybody gets over the line, one way or the other. And so after they've had a water break and a time to regain their thoughts, they tell them that this was a test to see if you could make it that last 50 yards on your own when you were wondering whether or not you really could or not. The first step in survival is the toughest 6 inches that you'll have to conquer, and it's right here. You have got to be in the mode that I'm going to survive and there's nothing going to stop me. I have a plan. I'm going somewhere to do whatever my plan is that I need to do to survive. That's super important. The second thing that comes into play in the survival mode is pride. Just plain old pride. Now, I'm not talking about being egotistical or arrogant. I'm talking about being proud of what you do, proud of who you are, proud that you're a police officer, proud that people have confidence in you day after day, and that you ride the roads or you walk the streets to protect people. And that pride starts every morning when you get up, you go into the bathroom, and you shave closely, and your hair's kept neat and trimmed properly. You've bathed yourself. Your hands are clean. Your personal hygiene is above reproach. That's called pride, people. That's what happens when you go out the door. The last thing you do when you leave your house after you put that fresh, crisp uniform on, that tie straight, the last thing you do is you look in the mirror and say, I'm the heat. It makes any difference if you're a man or a woman. You go out that door and you look like a catalog picture. That's called pride. And that pride will play a role in what happens to you when you need to survive. The next thing that plays a huge role in survival is your family, your friends, your co-workers, your other life other than being a police officer. If you're a one-dimensional person and all you do is go to work, come home, go to work, come home, you need to expand that dimension. Your family is important. Get involved in the community doing something other than police work. Have your friends over. Go over to their house. Play softball, basketball. Get in a bowling league. Do something so that you will interface with other people in the community and your family. Because when you're laying down on the ground, that's what's going to be running through your mind. Is, do these people want me to live or do they want me to die? They want me to live. They want me to live. I'm laying there and I'm thinking, man, I have been tested before. I have reached down and I have gotten a handful of gravel that I didn't know I could get. And I am a prideful person. I owe it to myself. I owe it to my family. I owe it to my police department to do whatever plan it is that you have, whether it's to get back, get on the radio, whether it's to call in a description, whatever it is, whatever your plan is, that's how it's going to work in your mind. I know I've been there. I've done that. I know that I had to lay there on the side of the road and come up with the plan. Now, the final thing is I can't teach you this. I can't do anything but tell you this. And that is, can you ask for help? Can you ask for help? Now, I'm not talking about reaching up here and clicking your lapel mic. I'm not talking about getting on your cell phone and calling your buddy to come over and help you move. I'm talking about, can you ask for help from the man up above? Now, I know that may sound a little corny, but let me tell you something. As I lay on the side of the road, I came up with a plan. My plan was to get back to my patrol car and call for help. Because I knew I had been tested. I knew I had been pushed. I knew the Highway Patrol expected that of me. I knew my family didn't want me to let them down. But there was one other thing that I felt very confident that I needed to do. And that is that I said, Lord, I could use a little help here. And you know it. If you'll help me, I'll try to be a better person. And I want you to know that right at that very instant, that very second, when I said that, a car stopped 20 feet from me. And the man got out and he tried to help me. But he couldn't use a radio in the patrol car. It was too complicated for him. I hollered at him to try to get to use it and he wouldn't, and I'm still there way up in front of my car, and he says, I'm going for help. So he jumps in his automobile and he takes off and he goes for help. I guess the Lord figured that he didn't look at me, didn't help me quite enough, because he sent some more help. After I had gotten back to my patrol car and called for help, I passed out. If I had died, everyone would have said that I died a gruesome death. But in actuality, I had a peace and a comfort come over me after I did what I said I was going to do. I had my plan. I fulfilled my plan. I got back to the car, got on the radio, called for help, and when I let go of the mic, I started to fade out, but I felt good because I knew what I had done was the right thing to do. And then the second round of help came. In 1975, ambulance drivers weren't trained to be emergency medical technicians. They were basically load them up and see how fast you could drive to the hospital. And on this particular morning, there was one person in that county, was trained in EMT. Now, first thing you know is when you get to a scene and there's somebody there involved, the first thing is clear the airway. Well, I had swallowed my tongue. A typical ambulance personnel person would have not done that, and I would have probably died en route to the hospital. But this person knew that. One guy in the whole county was trained in EMT, and he happened to be in the back of that ambulance. I got some help on that one. En route to the hospital, I came back conscious. I was able to have conversation with the emergency people in the back, was able to give them names, numbers, license tag numbers, who the suspect was, etc. All that is another story. Some more help came my way. They put me on a helicopter and flew me to Chapel Hill. Except when they got close, it was raining and foggy and they weren't able to land, so they diverted to Raleigh-Durham Airport. This was an Army medevac helicopter. The only oxygen on board was a small canister, and I had used that oxygen for about an hour on the flight up there and trying to find out a way to get over to Chapel Hill because of no instruments at the helipad there, etc. I had about used it up. And when they were able to determine that the ambulance was too far away to get me the oxygen that I needed because I had been shot through the lung and unable to breathe, the helicopter pilot had done 3 tours of Vietnam. He was a major in the Army. He graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, so he knew his way around the area. And because I was a man in uniform, and because he had taken so many wounded soldiers out of the fields of Vietnam, he felt like that one uniform deserved the same chance as another uniform. And so he picked that helicopter up and he flew it down I-40 over to NC-54 and flew it treetop level into Chapel Hill until he was able to find the landmarks that he recognized so he could guide himself through the treetops or above the treetops over to the hospital and land me safely. Now, what are the chances of a helicopter pilot that had graduated from Chapel Hill flying my mission? It's a heck of a coincidence. But I think that the entire process rolled together, and this is the way it has to roll together for you to survive. You've got to want to. You've got to be tested. You've got to have pride. You've got to reach down and get it when you don't think you can get it. You can never say the word Q-U-I-T. It's not in your vocabulary in that particular scenario. You can't do that. And then, my suggestion, based on my experience, I'd ask for a little help. Because it sure did work for me. So officer survival is something that you can prepare for mentally and physically. I hope to God that you never ever get into that situation. But if you do, you can always remember back and say, I saw a guy on TV one time that he'd been shot up a lot. He crawled on his back about 20 feet back to his car. He got on the radio and called for help. Hopefully, you'll be able to do the same thing.